The Story of Watcher, 2022. American Julia moves to Bucharest with her husband, Francis, who takes a marketing job there. Francis, whose mother is Romanian, is fluent in the language, but Julia is not. The couple move into an apartment building with a large picture window. Julia immediately notices a man looming in a window from the building across the street. While Francis works long hours, Julia attempts to familiarize herself with the city and begins learning Romanian. However, she is continuously unnerved by the man in the window, whom she notices watching her on a daily basis. Julia's fear heightens when she learns of a serial killer, dubbed the Spider by local media, who is decapitating young women. While walking through the city one day, Julia senses a man is following her. She enters a movie theater in an attempt to evade him, but the man follows her inside and sits directly behind her. In a panic, Julia exits the theater and walks to a nearby market, where the man also follows her. She manages to flee through a back exit. That night, Francis finds Julia rattled by the incident, and, at his suggestion, they visit the market to review the security footage. They find footage of the man and Julia in the store, but Francis is unconvinced that he was stalking Julia. Julia finds some comfort in her neighbor, Irina. While the two have drinks together, Irina's ex-boyfriend Christian knocks on her door, but she makes him leave. Irina shows Julia a pistol Christian gave her that she keeps for protection in the drawer of her coffee table. Later that night, Julia returns to her apartment and confronts the man in the window by returning his stare. She waves at him, and he waves back. Convinced that the man in the window is the same man who followed her, Julia calls the police. Francis accompanies an officer to the adjacent building to speak with the man, whom they learn is named Daniel Weber. One day, Julia follows Daniel through the city, eventually ending up at a strip club, where he works as a janitor. Irina, a dancer at the club, spots Julia and takes her aside. Julia questions Irina about Daniel, but Irina knows nothing about him. Later that night, Julia hears a commotion in Irina's apartment. She knocks on her door repeatedly, but receives no answer. The landlady unlocks the apartment, but they find no sign of Irina. Francis becomes impatient with Julia, believing that her fears are imagined, and points to the fact that the spider has apparently been apprehended. The next day, Christian arrives searching for Irina. Julia tells him Irina never returned home and asks him to accompany her to confront Daniel in his building. Christian agrees, but no one answers the door. When Christian leaves, Julia works up the nerve to knock on the door herself, but it is answered by an elderly man. Later that night, while Francis is home, a police officer arrives at their apartment accompanied by Daniel, who accuses Julia of stalking him. Julia reluctantly shakes Daniel's hand as the officer chalks the incident up to a misunderstanding. Julia accompanies Francis to a company party. During a conversation in Romanian, Julia gleans that Francis has made jokes about her fears to his coworkers. She angrily leaves the party and boards the subway, where she soon notices Daniel in the near-empty car. When he approaches her and attempts to explain the reasons for his voyeurism of her, that he lives an isolated, unexciting life caring for his father, Julia notices what appears to be the outline of a severed head in his shopping bag. Julia swiftly deboards the subway and returns to the apartment, where she begins packing her belongings. She is interrupted by the sound of music playing in Irina's apartment. When she goes to investigate, she finds Irina's headless corpse before Daniel smothers her with a plastic bag. When Julia regains consciousness, Daniel recounts how he killed Irina and that he hid with her body in a closet. When Julia and the landlady entered the apartment, Julia hears Francis enter their apartment next door, but when she attempts to scream, Daniel slashes the side of her throat. Julia attempts to crawl to Irina's coffee table to retrieve the pistol, but stops short of it. Daniel lies next to her, watching as she appears to lose consciousness. Francis calls Julia's cell phone, which he hears ringing inside Irina's apartment. He goes into the hallway, where he sees Daniel exiting. Francis begins to walk towards him, but before he reaches him, Julia, who feigned her death, shoots Daniel multiple times, killing him. Julia steps out of Irina's apartment, covered in blood, and stares at Francis,